here in Israel, and we hope to have legalization just as soon as possible.
Does anybody else have anything to add on the issue of legalization before we move on to our next question? And thank you, Narkis, for sharing very insightful information there.
I just say that people are always surprised in conferences when we talk about Israeli regulation that Israel is very open-minded to the industry, and there really isn't. I can't recall for quite a few years now any real principled debate. Nobody's nobody significant, and no party on whichever aisle, even very ultra-conservative parties, are not against it in principle. Our problem is governance and efficient government work, just getting these things through the pipelines, getting the committees to sit, to vote, to push it through. So, yeah.
Anyone else, or shall we move on to our next discussion point?
Yeah, we can move forward.
All right, so this one I think perhaps is something that might be suited to Deepak answering. Of course, everyone is welcome to chime in, but this one is more around how the global cannabis market has reacted to what is happening in the region, and how it's kind of impacting the global kind of cannabis markets.
Yeah, look, I mean, the industry, of course, is empathetic to the situation in Israel. But in addition to that, Israel is the largest importer of medical cannabis on a global scale. So what is happening on the ground certainly has impacts across the globe as it relates to the cannabis industry specifically. To that end, as Narkis mentioned, COVID's kind of taught us all to operate in a remote type environment. However, the one thing that I'm paying very close attention to is the ability of commercial flights to both enter and leave Israel. And I think that is certainly having impacts on supplies of cannabis. I mean, we certainly know that cannabis is coming into Israel through a variety of countries, including Canada. Canada recorded Israel as a top 3 country, being the highest exporters from this market into that location. So certainly currently there isn't an impact. I mean, Ilal is currently flying to Toronto, and they can certainly carry this. But as the situation evolves and as more commercial flights kind of change, and as Ilal perhaps doesn't fly to certain jurisdictions, that situation is fluid and might result in change and could even result in shortages. So I think it's certainly something that is worth keeping an eye on. I don't think it's impacting things as it stands currently, but could very well in the future. That's one that I'm keeping a very, very close eye on.
A type of knock-on effect, right? For kind of the way things might play out in the future. Anything that anyone else would like to jump in on this question?
I agree with Deepak. Traditionally, December has been the month that we've seen quite a lot of imports into Israel. December is already after they've been imported into Israel and processed. And I'm assuming that because of the war, this will, instead of happening in December, this will happen in January. So it'll shift the schedule.
So again, we're seeing that kind of knock-on effect there, right?
I think when you're looking at the international business community as well, there's a lot of understanding and support. Everyone saw how the world really was shocked from the events, and there's a lot of support to Israeli companies. We're doing a lot of business in the UK and speaking with colleagues across Europe. And everyone is, first of all, everyone knows about the conflict. It's not something small anymore. It's broadcast in the news on a daily basis every day. So most of the conversations are starting with this framing of we hope everything is okay with your family and people in Israel. So I see that that in this situation right now, there's a lot of understanding, specifically from our colleagues and partners and people that we're doing business with. So if I'm looking at that aspect, I don't see any significant changes. And I hope that things will stay the same, that this international support will continue to be the same.
Jacob, anything to add?
I think Aviv covered it.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. So let's talk a little bit more about the regulatory changes. Narkis, you did touch on it a bit earlier on, but if these regulatory changes take place, how will this kind of affect the global cannabis supply chain, cultivation, research, of course, distribution? Narkis, obviously, you can speak to this, and Jacob, as a lawyer, I'm sure this is something that you can probably speak on as well.
Sure, sure. The reform is planning to do quite a bit, both locally and for us as exporters. Locally, finally, we're hoping to get CBD descheduled. I think we're the last ones that CBD is still considered a dangerous drug here in Israel, which is a bit bizarre. But hopefully, this will change quite soon. So CBD will be descheduled. We're hoping to be able to get to dissolve the problem of licenses, so that any doctor can actually write a script for cannabis, which will just streamline the industry quite a bit. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that locally, in order to get a cannabis license, you have to have tried two alternative means of taking care of your medical condition. This will finally be done away with, and you can begin with cannabis. I think the entire country recognizes that there's just no sense of that. Cannabis is less dangerous than the chemical drugs that people are taking. So that's locally. As far as exports, regulations have been quite confusing here in Israel. In order for us to be able to export, for example, to Europe, we have to be able to work with EU GMP standards. And in Israel, the IMC GMP standards don't work together with the EU GMP standards. So if you can uphold the Israeli standards, then you can't export to Europe, which is kind of ridiculous. The reform has stated that we will be able to, and that they will find a way for us to be able to be on both levels, both IMC GMP and EU GMP. We're hopeful. In the meantime, we have already invested locally to be able to have parts of our facility under the IMC GMP, and we're building onto the facility in order to have the other parts work with the EU GMP. So that's what I think several of the local companies are doing now. But the new reform will have us maybe streamline is the correct word, to streamline the whole process so that we can finally be able to export to Europe. We've been in discussions with companies. We've been in discussions with Aviv for, what is it now, 2 years now, Aviv? 2.5 years? Waiting to get this problem solved. We have product. The market is looking forward to receiving our product, and we haven't been able to get that done. Hopefully, the new reform will help with that. I don't see the war having any kind of effect on that. It's once we get the EU GMP issue solved, we'll be able to push forward.
Melissa, if I can, just with an update with respect to the current situation, certainly, it was great to see the Israel Ministry of Health, jump into action right away, and I think it is worth noting that the MOH has now confirmed that a 3-month extension will be granted to all patients whose license had either expired or was due to expire in the next month, and obviously haven't had time to renew this. So certainly, as it relates to the current situation, it was great to see the Israeli Ministry of Health jump into action and provide that extension to patients, particularly patients that have debilitating conditions during this time. So I just thought I would point that out.
Absolutely.
Jacob, anything to add from a legal standpoint that you could perhaps share with us?
I'd say 3 things. First of all, this reform is much needed, and I think it will make a big difference because it makes life easier on all levels. It makes life easier for patients. Licenses, as Narkis said, they'll get prescriptions. They're expanding the number of indications that would justify prescription for cannabis, and also they're shifting in terms of supervising everything. There'll be a little less supervision, a little less site visits, more relying on statements by companies, by farms, and that's very important because it was very burdensome and expensive for companies. I, of course, would have liked to see them go further ahead. And when I hear things about GMP and various other areas where we're just not, the regulation isn't aligned with the business needs, that drives me absolutely crazy because while as lawyers we may, make nice fees when there's regulation involved, but I hate it when the law gets in the way of the business. The law should be serving business when it's of course healthy and contributed it contributes to society. It's just horrible that such a promising industry like ours with such talented people, that we were on the vanguard of cannabis research and growing, and the regulation has been holding us back for so long. So I guess we have to say be grateful for the move ahead that we have now, and hopefully there'll be more steps in the future.
Wonderful. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's all about moving forward, right? And I think that's an extremely good sentiment to share. Avihu, anything to add on this point, or shall we move on to our next discussion?
No, I agree with everyone.
Wonderful. Okay, so talking just about kind of the long-term implications, Narkis, you already said you don't necessarily see it affecting some of these future plans. But do you think, if any, are there any long-term implications that could emerge as a result of this conflict, or are there some learnings perhaps that can be taken into consideration?
I stand I will in generally, and we've gone through quite a bit here in Israel as far as wars go, and unfortunately we're accustomed to situations like this. In general, in the aftermath, we've been able to get back on our feet really quickly, and go back to business as usual. Similar to what happened in COVID again. I think the entire world jumped right back on path and kept going with business as usual. And I'm pretty optimistic that's exactly what's going to be happening here. Again, locally, unfortunately, we have a country in trauma, and we expect the market, unfortunately, and usually as a business, I want the market to grow, but not under these types of circumstances. But we are a country in trauma. The entire south of the population in the south has all gone through unbelievable trauma, and we will have to take care of them. So it's more of a local issue. I think internationally, globally, we'll just pop right back on path and business as usual.
I think we're a very resilient people, and I think we will get on our feet, as Narkis said. I will say that personally, and everybody I know, as Narkis said, I've lived through wars and some pretty bad terrorist attacks, but after this, I'm not going to be the same person. And I mean, this was very, very traumatic. It will affect us for years ahead, but yeah, we will get back to work and get on our feet. So
I think that the question is for long term, really connected to what will be the situation. What is long term? No one knows how long this current situation will last. It seems like it's not something that is a quick operation that will be done in a few weeks. We don't know if it's weeks, months, years. No one have an idea. Maybe it's a new reality, and that the citizens of Israel will need to work under. And now that's the way things are going to be in the meantime. And it means that you need to find ways. I very much hope that we won't have only one airline company flying in and out of Israel for the next year, and things will get better. But but there's really, I think no one can guess right now how long this war will last.
One of the major questions of you, will we be seeing each other at MJ Biz in November?
Exactly. I need to fly back to Israel soon. So that's the importance.
Absolutely, and I think it really is a testament to resilience, as you all have said, and I think that it's, if anything, it's a lesson that the rest of the world can kind of learn from this situation, right? So let's go on to our kind of final question before we start to wrap up and share our closing remarks. Do you have any examples of any success stories or examples of international collaborations that have persevered despite conflict? And what can other businesses learn from these kind of experiences? Whoever wants to jump in first can go ahead.
I'd say
So I think that. Go, Jacob.
I've seen this before, also during any type of crisis, but certainly during previous military operations, during COVID. And I think time and time again, building relationships and just having a strong relationship of trust where your business partner, your supplier, your customer knows that even if you're going through a hard time now and maybe you have some difficulties, whether it's to export something or to perform a service, they know that the relationship with you is worth the wait, is worth being patient. So just cultivate relationships beyond just the exchange and the quid pro quo. Strong trust between partners that look at things for the long run and not just for what happens in the next month.
I would say that, well, caveating this, that probably this is not very common around the world. So when you're asking if other businesses can learn from this, I'm not sure this is something that will occur often in businesses in the US and in Europe. But obviously, I think when you're thinking about mitigation and risks and what do you have, what are you going to do when crisis will hit? No one expected the COVID to happen worldwide. So you need to take your plan B seriously and have some mitigations in any plan you're doing. It's a very general thing to say. I think that if you're looking at what's happening in Israel with where and Jacob mentioned it before, where the government didn't perform fast enough and didn't support fast enough, there was a lot of just volunteering. A lot of the activities that are happening is just volunteering. Even Narkis and her company found ways how to get medications to patients that just didn't have the capability to get their prescriptions in time, if they needed to renew it, if they need to see a doctor, and find creative ways to do that. I mentioned before volunteers that going into literally front line, just on the border with Gaza, to help with trimming and just save businesses. So I think this is not a business strategy, but obviously if you succeeding to have clients and patients that are good and supportive, when you will have a hard time, and it doesn't have to be a war, it can be any other business crisis, where your patients or clients are more loyal to you, you can expect to get more, I would say, grace from them in hard times. And that's something that I really surprised to see in a positive way.
I can tell you that locally the industry has pulled together, and we're all working together as opposed to competing with each other, and helping each other as much as possible to get product to the patients, and just helping each other, like Aviv said, what happened in the South, trimming. The whole industry is really locally is coming together and helping each other and working together. So that's a positive aspect. And again, it comes down to relationships, like both Jacob and Aviv said. It comes down to relationships and and working with people as opposed to working with numbers or doing quick business. It's all about relationships.
That's really wonderful, and I do think that is also kind of a testament to the cannabis community and bringing the plant, bringing people together, and everyone working together in this kind of central way, which is really lovely to hear. So as and what a great way to kind of end off on the last question on a really positive note. So thanks for sharing that, everyone. So before we do end off today, I would just like to give each of you the opportunity to share any final thoughts that you may have, any key takeaways from the discussion, anything else you would like to add before we end the live stream today. Deepak, why don't you begin since you introduced yourself first?
Sure. I mean, look, I guess I'll, end with, really just the relationship point that I think Jacob made. I think it's really, really important to have strong relationships. I mean, I think we've all heard the saying that, tough times don't last, but tough people do. So I think it's really important for you to have those strengths in relationships. And so, I would say that's probably paramount. Obviously, our thoughts are with everyone in Israel at the moment, and the challenges that they're facing. So certainly from an international perspective, that's something that the cannabis community globally kind of shares.
Wonderful, thank you, Deepak. Now, Keith, would you like to go next?
You know what? Yes, I think that the main message I'd like to leave is that we're accustomed to crisis here in Israel, unfortunately, but we're extremely resilient, and we're continuing business as usual. There's no reason for anyone to stop working with us. We know how to do business under these kinds of situations, and business is really, I can tell you from Medicon, business is continuing as usual. And I'm extremely confident that once this is over with, we'll be back on our feet within days. Just because we've been here before, not as bad as this one, granted. This has been the worst. I'm not going to continue that sentence, but we are extremely resilient. We're grateful for the relationships we have with our international partners, and we'll be back on our feet quite quickly.
Lovely, thank you, Narkis. Jacob, would you like to share your final thoughts?
I really have to say I sign off on everything that Narkis said. There's no doubt in my mind, and no matter what exactly the next few months have in store for us, we have a strong economy. We have very talented people, very resilient business leaders, and I think Israel is so intertwined in the international business community and in various industries that no matter what happens, we're still going to be a strong link in the global economy, and we're not gonna miss a beat.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jacob. And last but not least, of course, Avihu, anything that you would like to add as we wrap things up?
I will just say that the best way to support Israel in this time is to keep on doing business as usual. Definitely, people abroad invite Israelis. Hopefully, they will be able to come to events like normal and buy Israeli products. That's the best way. Trying to, as much as possible, run the business and the relationship like normal will be the best support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. And really, thank you so much. I just would like to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you incredible panelists that we have here today, Deepak, Narkis, Jacob, and Avihu. Thank you so much. Your insights have been really invaluable, and your contributions to the cannabis industry are really inspiring. And we wish everyone in Israel all the best during this tumultuous time. We really hope that the situation is resolved sooner rather than later. So thank you so much again, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
And before we end off the live stream today, I just would also like to remind you all about Canmar, we are hosting the live stream today. If you want to learn more about who we are and what we do, website at canmar.io. We also encourage you to download our Canmar Hub community app and become a member of the global cannabis and psychedelics community. It is available for download on iOS and Android app stores. And you can also find us on all the regular social media channels at Canmar Official. And you can also find me hosting the Canmar Morning Talk Show on YouTube and Spotify, talking to some of the incredible thought leaders in the industry from around the globe, just as I have done today. And finally, I would like to thank everyone who has tuned in today, our wonderful audience. Thank you for being here at what makes these discussions truly meaningful. And don't forget to continue the conversation on social media and the Canmar Hub app and share your thoughts on today's discussion. Make sure to follow all of our panelists on socials to stay up to date on what they're working on. Let's keep that dialogue going. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay informed, and let's continue shaping the future of this dynamic industry together. Until next time, bye.